Incoming transmission.
The Klingonese phrase of the day is beer.
These are the voyages of the starship Enterprise.
So, this is a huge victory for the good guys.
Scotty, beam me up.
Resistance is futile. Live long and prosper.
Boldly go where no man has gone before.
Greetings and welcome to the Computer Resume podcast, a show covering the entire Star Trek franchise in chronological order for fans new and old. I'm your host, writer-comedian, Mr. Todd A. Davis. Folks, he's back again for the second time this season to show us on the plushie where the Gorn touched him. It's Drew Burris. Yeah. Hey, buddy.
Hey, thank you for having me back.
Dude, man, I think when you first came on, if not your first, then definitely your second appearance on the show was when you claimed this episode.
I think I might have claimed Memento Mori first, which was, of course, when I was on a few weeks ago.
Right.
We stand the Gorn in this household, and I am happy to be the Gorn representative for the Computer Resume podcast.
Hey, you know what? Yeah, I'll go ahead and mark you down as our Gorn ambassador for sure, man. So we are, as we are recording this, pulling the curtain back on production of, CRPod. We've recorded a few things out of order, and Discovery just started back. So we are, of course, the 2-episode season premiere is behind us. Staying spoiler free. What do we think? How do we feel? Are we liking it so far?
So far, I'm enjoying it. I have liked Discovery since the early days, including when there was a Gorn skeleton in Captain Lorca's little science lab.
Yes.
I wasn't on that episode of the show, but no. No, but I Discovery is much more and more its own thing, and as I kind of, it fostered a new generation of Star Trek that we had not had in a very long time.
Oh yeah.
I've liked a lot of it. I have disliked some of it. I have watched true fans, I forget this is an audio podcast, but I did air quotes with that, just lament and destroy Discovery and talk all sorts of nonsense about it. And even at its best, is it my favorite Star Trek show? No, but I still really, really enjoy it. And this has been a really, really strong start to their final season, going down a pathway that I never saw coming. And I am pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I'm gonna do my best to stay spoiler free. I like, based on the first 2 episodes, we get some changing of the guard, as it were. Some established relationships move on to the next level. But I wonder if this Indiana Jones-esque turn will pay off. I don't have any reason to doubt that it won't, but I feel like going in knowing that it's the final season, I see both sides of just kind of like, well, we're going to pull out all the stops, but at the same time, it's kind of like, oh, we're, Discovery's breaking another mold here, in that they kind of knew going in, okay, this is it. So I'm wondering if this is the end, or is this the end of the first section of Discovery? Like, will this lead to movies and other appearances? I mean, I know that we've got the Section 31 movies coming.
Well, Section 31 movie I am excited about for completely different reasons. But
yes,
they have the Starfleet Academy series that's announced is confirmed to be in the 32nd century
Mm.
post-burn Discovery era. And I was so excited when they went super far into the future.
Mhm.
My only problem is I just don't like the style of anything. I don't like the style of the ships. It hurts my heart
Oh.
that I don't like it. But it's and the programmable matter just seems a little too magical. But the stories that they're telling are more interesting than what they were doing back in as a prequel to the original series. And yeah, it's always Discovery's. If I had to say what the fault of Discovery for me, it's that it's always this big universe changing long plot that only the Discovery can take care of, and we have another one of those, but this one's just been a lot more fun to see play out so far. So
Yeah, with the Section 31 movie and Starfleet Academy right around the corner, I have a feeling that they're probably not going to stop there. I'm hoping Tawny Newsome from Lower Decks remains part of the writing staff, because from everything I've seen, she's a huge Star Trek fan, and
she is
yeah, and she brings that along with her comedic sensibilities and creativity. So everything looks good on paper,
Yeah.
so
But
I'm excited for it. But at the same, I mean, look, I think I've proven through almost 130 episodes of doing this show that like it's Star Trek. I'm on board.
yeah,
But I also feel like I'm objective enough to say like, oh, this was not as strong as other episodes or other series, yada yada yada. But all that to say, I'm excited to see what happens next with Burnham and the gang. It's yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff going on.
yeah. Can we just wax nerdy about the casting announcements of the Section 31 movie though?
I tell you what, let's hold off. Okay, before we do that, let's talk a little bit about this episode of Strange New Worlds that we're getting into, and then once we're in spoiler territory, we will basically have a recap of our entire conversation where we spill the beans on everything. So you being our Gorn ambassador, this is a big episode for you because we are really getting our first eyeful of the new Gorn, or the original Gorn, or it's this
Whatever
puppet
we're gonna
digital combo Gorn that are part alien, like part Ridley Scott alien, part part predator, all badass.
yeah. Is this well, we're not in spoiler territory yet. So is this the bloodiest episode of Star Trek so far?
Might be yeah, this might be because I mean anything else, because you in terms of brutality, you think, oh well, the Mirror Universe episodes, yeah, but it's people in tubes screaming, that's about it.
Yeah.
This is like blood in the snow, a lot of blood in the snow.
Severed limbs.
Yeah, like this is rough, man. I mean, even Will Wheaton says it in the Ready Room episode after this. After this episode, this would have never aired on network television. There's no way.
Not once. No.
You might have gotten away with it on like HBO or something like that, but not network for sure. Overall thoughts about this episode, all those who wander, in terms of the Gorn, in terms of the crew being on this planet without backup. There's some things going on. I think it's funny, as big as this episode is, I feel like there's less going on than prior episodes. It's like prior episodes, there's always been like, oh, there's an A plot and a B plot, and hey, there's a C plot and a D plot. Like this is like
there was a whole B plot about the K7 station that we just don't even see.
Yeah. This is like, oh yeah, we're on our way to do this thing. Okay, well, now we got a detour. You guys have fun.
That's sort of do you want to do the whole recap before we get into this, or
I mean, I can tell both of us are just chomping at the bit. So let's go ahead. Before either of us burst, before a baby Gorn bursts out of either of our chests, let's get to this week's recap. Brought to you in part by our Patreon supporters, Rev J, Jerry Antimano, CosmicCrit, Kitty B, David Willett, Ed Milner, Fleet Admiral First Class Fred Sims, and Ren, Space Monkey 73, Steph Overman, and Sir Chauncey Dalton Featherstone III, Esquire.
Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert. Spoiler alert.
Incoming Priority 1 mission from Starfleet Gamemaster. The USS Peregrine's in the distress column.
I advise we send a landing party.
Captain's log. We found infected castaways. Stay away.
What the hell did this?
20 casualties so far. Some of them were picked apart.
Enterprise is en route to Space Station Deep Space K7 when it receives another priority assignment to investigate the missing USS Peregrine. Enterprise drops off the away team and continues to K7. On the ice planet,
I don't know why they call it Hoth. They should call it Cold.
Pike and the away team find the grounded Peregrine, which looks suspiciously like the Enterprise for production reasons, I'm sure.
How convenient.
Hemmer and Uhura restore the ship's systems while Pike learns that it was carrying
1, 2, 3.
3 refugees.
3.
One was infected with Gorn eggs.
Sucks.
The hatchlings burst from his body and attack the crew.
Great.
Pike's team finds the other 2 refugees, who are the only survivors. One of them is also infected with Gorn eggs, and the hatchlings burst out. They attack the away team, but they also fight each other until only the strongest hatchling is left. The team form a plan to kill the hatchling using cold temperatures from the ship's environmental controls, but not before Hemmer is infected. He encourages Uhura to remain in Starfleet before throwing himself from the ship, so he'll die in the cold along with the Gorn inside him. After the crew mourn Hemmer, Lon takes a leave of absence to help the last refugee find her family. I wonder how long she'll need.
The world may never know.
Incoming transmission.
Is your house without honor? Are the walls of your home covered with paint instead of your enemy's blood? Restore your family's name with authentic weapons and wares from KlingonShop.com. KlingonShop.com has been honorably forging Klingon weapons since 2020. Real replica batleths, macleths, kurleths, the Sword of Kahless, and more. Whether you're decorating your domicile or completing your cosplay, KlingonShop.com has everything you need with deals so good you'll think we're Ferengi. And then I'll kill you for thinking such disgusting thoughts. Today is a good day to support KlingonShop.com, unless you're a Patak.
Okay, Mr. Rozhenko, thank you for coming in. That was great.
Of course it was! Now get me the hell out of here!
Hi, I'm Bonnie Gordon, the voice of the USS Protostar on Star Trek Prodigy. You're listening to the Computer Resume podcast.
Okay, so now we're in spoiler territory. Let's open the floodgates.
Ooh, okay. So I mentioned in our brief discussion of Discovery earlier that,
Yeah.
there's stuff that I like about Discovery, and there's stuff that I dislike about Discovery, and some of the stuff that I dislike about Discovery is stuff that breaks canon because canon matters. It matters so much. But yeah, as it turns out, if the story that you're telling and the episode that you're using to do it is so compelling, apparently that doesn't matter at all. I think this episode, much like a lot of Strange New Worlds, is just so compelling, and the performances of the cast are second to none with that.
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll talk about Hemmer, who has been this just super interesting character, this Anar, this deep cut Star Trek Enterprise creation of a blind psychic Andorian. And you make him the chief engineer, and you make him kind of grumpy, but then you see over the course of 8 episodes his growing mentorship of Uhura, and Celia Rose Gooding just slays it as Uhura.
Yes.
She is so good in this role, and this episode is just paramount. No pun intended to the production.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I really enjoy, and honestly, my wife really enjoys the grumpy old man archetype of just kind of, oh, these kids today. All right, I guess I'll save the day or whatever. Like, and he's had some wonderful lines, and we'll give Bruce Horak a more thorough send off later in this episode, but man, every line that he's given, even if it's a seemingly just a throwaway line, just from his lips, like it just oozes with tension and purpose and energy. He has turned Hemmer, like you said, a subspecies that was really explored in a handful of episodes of Enterprise. 20 years ago.
Remind me, it was 20 years ago.
I know, right? But that's been brought back in a big way here on Strange New Worlds.
Well, and the beautiful part about his performance is that because he is blind, so much of his he's covered in makeup. I mean, with this Andorian Anar makeup, but because of the blindness, he does so much very specific work with his hands when he's doing things, and part of that is just being an engineer. Like there's one scene in this where they're trying to get the power back on the Peregrine in the engine room, and he's just like connecting these two things, and it's just very deliberate, and for some reason it just stuck out to me as like, not everybody would have moved just like that. I really the performance is so strong, and man, the fan reaction to this death was just brutal.
I've said before in I'm sure certainly this show, but other shows where I've had the opportunity to talk about comics or film or television, but one of the things that gets overlooked a lot, either by writers or it gets squashed in a studio note or something like that, is having one of your main characters killed off. And what that does narratively is it raises the stakes for everyone else, because now there's a sense of no one is safe. When you see Keanu Reeves is the one in the Matrix, you think, you know what? He's probably not going to die. Well,
and that's especially weird in a show that is effectively a prequel, because certain characters are not going to die because they show up years later in things.
Yeah, exactly. And in terms of the structure of Strange New Worlds, there's a handful of characters that we know, okay, because of the timeline, because of how the franchise is set up, this person's safe, this person's safe, this person's safe. Outside of that, we are left to wonder, we are left to fall in love with certain characters whose fates are in the hands of the creatives, and we are just along for the ride. Yeah.
This is his death in this episode marks the 4th time that a main character in Star Trek has died in the first season.
Okay. Tasha Yar.
Correct.
Hemmer, of course, because that's who we're talking about. First season deaths.
One of these you're going to kick yourself about because you're like, oh, well, yeah, but does that really count?
Okay, give me the last two.
Lorca in season 1 of Discovery.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And one that also is like, does that really count? Is the sacrifice, spoiler warning for a show that will take Todd years to get to, but I can't wait for him to cover it. Shax in Lower Decks.
Shax, yes. I mean, it's true. And to be honest, loved his send off. Speaking of send offs, what did you think of the little memorial there in the ready room?
Oh man, tears.
Yeah, it's rough.
Because they hit you with Ortegas, and Ortegas is the character that she has gotten maybe the least development in Strange New Worlds so far, especially in the first season. But again, I've said this before in other podcasts. When you have something that is so compelling, you will learn. Like, there are characters on Discovery who have been bridge members since season 1, whose names I always have to look up because I just don't remember who they are.
Yeah.
But I remember Erica Ortegas because she is compelling and they give her her own stuff to do.
Yes.
And she is the pilot of the Enterprise, and just her, talking about how weddings are a bummer. Or the weddings, funerals, not weddings, funerals. Wow, that's a Freudian slip. Isn't it?
I was gonna say, did we just get a look into Drew Burris?
Nope. Very happy in that category. At least I hope. I left my wife to deal with our kids by herself while I came down to record a Star Trek podcast. So we'll see what happens when I go back upstairs.
As far as you know, you are currently happily married.
Yes. But she then turns that into this very somber moment, and I love that they give that to Ortegas first before they have Uhura speak.
Yeah.
And really, and we have to, I mean, the title of this episode, All Those Who Wander, from that's Tolkien, right?
I believe so.
All those who wander are not lost. Because Uhura in this entire season has been questioning what she wants to do and where she wants to be, and the idea that Hemmer and her have had this partnership that was completely unexpected, honestly, I think, for both of them, and to see the respect for each other grow and the mentorship from Hemmer grow across this season was just so fun and interesting to see, and to see this sort of realization that all Hemmer wanted to do, his life's mission, was to fix what was broken. And it's in this moment that she realizes that she had something that she thought was broken inside of her, and through that relationship with him, it's fixed, and she now knows where she wants to be. And when you and then after this scene, you see her go to the bridge and look over at the communications console of the Enterprise, and you hear that Uhura earpiece noise. It's just, I love this show.
Yeah. Oh man. In hearing you speak so eloquently about the notion of all those who wander, it makes me kind of look at the rest of the crew. We've talked on this show before about Pike being the builder. He is the builder of this crew, but he is also the builder of each individual crew member and helping them become what is known as this legendary crew of the Enterprise. Yeah. And I think
gonna be honest, didn't do a great job in this episode, but I'll let you go.
But looking at what Pike has done over not only this season, but you can see him develop himself in that second season of Discovery, looking at him and himself included as one of the people who is wandering, and whether or not they are lost or not. Because, well, let's just run down the list. Spock, he's wandering through his emotions. So is Christine Chapel. We as fans are kind of wandering with Ortegas, as she is this legendary war hero who just wants to go on an away mission. She's striving for that. We are wandering with M'Benga, as he was this father figure. At this point now, he's that responsibility is no longer there.
His daughter has transcended the mortal plane.
And as we will see in season 2, he's not done wandering in terms of elements of his past. We'll hold off on spoilers on that. But I think number one, Una.
Number one, who has just revealed to the world that she is this alien species that is illegal in the Federation.
Yeah, she had been wandering she had been attempting to wander unnoticed through the Federation.
But it's interesting that you call this out, because there is so much wandering going on with our crew here, especially because this again, I have to remind myself in the episodes that don't directly talk about it. Pike at this point knows his fate.
Yes,
he knows what is going to happen.
That's what I was going to mention next. Yeah, go for it.
And that is something that he has come to terms with. And honestly, well, I take it back. He hasn't really come to terms with it. Right now, he's in this mode where he's kind of like, well, I know what's going to happen, so certainly nothing bad can happen to me before that. Not exactly what happens here on this particular episode.
Yeah.
Rest in peace, Lieutenant Ricky and Cadet Ricky.
Yeah.
But that's the next episode of the show. Spoiler warning of Pike dealing with this and figuring that out.
Right. And it's interesting to see because the crew of the Enterprise is so smart. This little piece of information, which we are led to believe knowledge is power. This piece of information has seemingly stripped power, because now he doesn't know what to do. He doesn't know how to proceed. He doesn't know, do I attempt to avoid this? Do I lean into it? How does this affect my command style? Am I even fit for command? Like, he is dealing with all of these things. Now it takes a back seat in this episode for sure.
In this episode, and maybe one of the worst decisions Pike has ever made. It's like, oh yeah, let's take the cadets on one last mission. Give them a little going away present. Oh, and Lieutenant Ricky can come along too, just because he got promoted and wants to show off. And yeah, I almost called him Ensign Ricky, but then I would have had to buy him a drink.
Yeah, watch yourself there. Yeah, it's and to be honest, we see Pike is the guy who has the meetings in his kitchen while he's very hands-on with his crew. Certainly more than Picard, even more than Kirk. Like he is so personal and hands-on with his crew. There is no sense of distance between, no fraternization with, the lower ranks. Like he has them for dinner. Like, we discuss work over here, have eggs and bacon and waffles.
Which is funny. I think about there's only one other captain that's cooked for his crew. And that's Cisco.
I was gonna say, yeah, Cisco. Yeah.
And it's interesting. You called Pike a builder earlier on, and that is that title that has been attributed to Cisco for so long, because Kirk is the adventurer, Picard's the diplomat, Cisco's the guy who was there building the society around the space station. And I hesitate to call Pike a builder, because he's not building that, but he's building up people. I just don't know if there's a better term than builder. Like Is he the mentor? Is he the
Well,
is
because
is he space dad?
well, depending on depending on what panel or at conventions you sit in, he's known as Space Daddy for sure.
Oh, I was at Dragon Con's panel last year when he did the whole when he gave the now iconic actors strike speech.
Oh, yes.
I watched it live. It was amazing.
Woo. Yeah, he's of course Anson Mount, wonderful actor. Just killing it every episode. As well as the rest of the cast. But talking about, and it's been a while since I've talked about this, but the archetypes of the captains. I've always said Kirk is the pirate, Picard's the soldier, Cisco is the father, Janeway is the shepherd, and Pike. I like the idea of Pike being the builder. But yeah, this is still an evolving. Archer's the explorer.
I will say it's interesting you call Cisco or Picard the soldier and Cisco the father, because Cisco's the one of the two of them that went to war.
Yeah. Well, I've said I've shortened it to the soldier, but I always said the soldier sailor. Just because I felt like that fit. I mean, truly, Patrick Stewart took that Horatio Hornblower, direction, quite literally.
Yeah,
and that's
for a Frenchman.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it's still trying to figure out Pike and even Freeman. She's in there too. There's a lot, and I think the writers, now more than ever, are so familiar with these types of characters and how well they play with the other types of characters, knowing that Uhura is very young. She needs someone who has that foresight, that insight, and what better way than an Anar, who a blind engineer who's there to fix things. Like, that's the perfect mentor-mentee combo. You look at Geordi and Data, and I think Will Riker even commented on one, kind of chuckled at the irony of a blind man teaching a robot to paint. But they are such a perfect combination. I mean, it's them as Sherlock Holmes and Watson. I would watch an entire season of them just going through all the
essays have been and will continue to be written about the relationship between Geordi LaForge and Data. I don't even want to get into it because I'll just completely derail from talking about this episode. So I'm going to stop myself.
There's your homework assignment, listeners. Go find your favorite essay about Geordi and Data and then report back.
But I guess I want to circle back around to this episode because this, this is effectively, in a weird way, a bottle episode.
Yeah,
which I've always loved bottle episodes. I'm sure you've talked about the term on the show before, but bottle episodes are episodes where they just use all of the sets they have so that they don't have to build anything new, and they don't go on location, and they do everything where they are.
Yep.
And the USS Peregrine, a Sombra class ship, which looks a lot like a Constitution class ship, and is stated it uses all the same parts from the Constitution, but it's really fast. I don't know what that means, but that's what the Sombra class is.
Right.
But that just means that all they have to do is change out a couple of panels where it said Enterprise to say Peregrine, and there you go.
Yep, that's it. Yeah. So, okay, so we've talked about the production design a little bit, and we've talked about our wonderful cast of characters, but let's get to the real reason we are here, the Gorn. So first, the plushie returns. So we see how they reproduce. We see them as hatchlings. We see them as more mature Gorn, not full adult Gorn. That comes later. But yeah, we get an eyeful of the Gorn. Now you've said that you won't let your kids watch the Gorn stuff in Strange New Worlds, correct?
Yes, correct.
Okay. And
because the first iteration of the Gorn that we see is exploding from an alien's body and then immediately killing a cadet.
Yeah. It's a little rough for young children for sure.
And then brutally attacking a dude and then dragging him to his death 5 seconds later.
Yeah.
These Gorn are scary. Actually, I take that back. The first thing, and then right after they kill the cadet, 2 other baby Gorns pop out, and one of them immediately kills the other one.
Yeah.
So these things are absolute. Well, they're wild, but they're also highly intelligent in a way that, like, look, does it make logical sense that they are this cunning when they're babies? No, it really doesn't. In the same way that it doesn't really make sense for the aliens in Alien or Aliens that these are clearly being based off of. It doesn't make sense for that either. Their venom spit plants more eggs. Like, that's tribble logic when it comes to Star Trek.
Yeah.
And does any of this fit with what we saw in the Gorn in the episode Arena in the original series? Not in the slightest. Even the eyes. The eyes are big and they're bulbous, but they are not. They're not the little hash pattern eyes. So they've stated that they're not gonna try to justify Arena with what they have shown with their Gorn in Strange New Worlds, and that's fine. It's just one of those things where you still have to at some point, because Gorn, like Arena, show up in Star Trek Lower Decks on multiple occasions.
Yep.
Including a wedding, which implies that they at some point will find romantic love. But if there's something that I will say, Star Trek Adventures, which listeners, if you have not checked out the CosmicCrit's run of Star Trek Adventures that I GM'd and that Todd was a wonderful player on, Folos Endelev.
Yeah.
Endelev.
Ready to stab.
The blue John Cena with antenna. Speaking
Exactly.
of Andorians. But they have a Lower Decks rulebook add-on that includes playable Gorn.
Nice.
And one of the side notes that they mention is royal bloodline. So it is entirely possible that this is a Gorn hegemony. That's always been the government of the Gorn. That we may end up seeing some rationale for why some Gorn are like this, but not all Gorn are like this. Which, that's all I got to do. I'm cool with that. I'm very cool with that. Also, give me more Gorn. I love the Gorn. My daughters made me love the Gorn.
So you mentioned your children. I mentioned your children a few moments ago. What is, since they love Gorn as you do as well, but they're not allowed to watch these episodes yet, what is in your mind the scariest thing that you'll let them watch?
I don't know. So keep in mind, my son is 12. He'd probably be fine. He's a Star Wars kid. Sorry.
It's okay. This is a safe place.
It's my daughter that is attached to the Gorn and is aligned more with Star Trek and she's only 9 at the time of this recording. So we'll get her there when it comes to stuff. So it's just more that, like, there's a lot of kid-based horror stuff that is so a lot of kid-based horror is not scary at all. If you're looking for kid-based horror that is actually pretty scary, there's a movie. It's based off of a book called Night Books. It's on Netflix.
Really?
Yeah. Miles, who is my co-host on the More You Nerd podcast, and I, every October we do what we call Trunk or Treat, where we cover youth-based horror. And Night Books is maybe the scariest kid horror thing that we have watched.
Really? This is new for me.
It keeps tension and it keeps surprise and jump scare, but it's not like super graphic, bloody, like it feels, it's new, but it feels more like what an 80s era kids horror movie would be, where they let things get darker. They let the lights actually get turned off, you know.
Wow. So, because my wife was big on Goosebumps and Are You Afraid of the Dark? So where does what's it called? Night Books?
Night Books. So
where is it in terms of those?
The scariest part of Are You Afraid of the Dark, and why I never as a child watched Are You Afraid of the Dark, is because the theme song to Are You Afraid of the Dark was absolutely terrifying. And then the show itself was relatively goofy and often starred Ryan Gosling.
Did he make appearances in that?
Oh, at least 2. Yeah, he was all over that place.
Oh, that's funny. Because I mean, it wasn't in my purview as a kid. But my wife was big on him, and I've asked her a couple times, like, has anybody famous popped up? And she's like, no, not really.
Oh,
but
now Ryan Gosling.
I'll have to go look.
Yeah. But basically, where I would put Night Books is Are You Afraid of the Dark intro sequence. As far as
okay, all right. No, that's good.
Scary.
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I mean, the scariest stuff I saw as a kid was stuff that I had no business watching as a kid.
Well, that's another thing. And this, I know we're getting away from Star Trek, but one of the things that is weird about raising kids today in 2024 is that I don't have cable. I only have streaming, and I am a big, you know, I don't like censorship. I don't like any of that, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
The one thing we do not have today in a way that I can easily access it is edited for TV content.
Oh yeah.
When
I was right about that. Yeah.
When I was my son's age, I'd seen Alien because it was on the Sci-Fi Channel on a Saturday afternoon.
Right.
But my son's not going to see Alien. He's got his streaming device is blocked out from it because I've set up all the parental controls and stuff like that, you know. You know, it's one of those things where I think about all these movies that I had seen at the time I was my kid's age, like, you know, Back to the Future is a movie that my kids haven't seen yet, and I had seen 100 times by this point.
Oh yeah, I was in the same boat for sure.
Because when it comes to the edited for content stuff, it keeps the core of what's going on, and it just cuts out the real bad stuff.
Yeah, stuff that sometimes just puts it over the line from PG to PG-13 or from PG-13 to R. Yeah. Like they had just one too many swear words, or just one scene where someone showed something they shouldn't, or whatever it is. But sometimes it's just enough to get it over the line, and the TV editing just kind of brings it back down. Yeah. Oh man.
And it's weird it's weird to argue for that, because I feel like some sort of like hyper conservative, like, no, not in my house kind of thing. But it's like, I don't know, there's space for that. Like, it doesn't have to, I don't want that to be all there is, but like, I know that HBO Max, whatever it's called now, has access to all of the edited for cable stuff, because that's the same company that's TNT and TBS. I know they've got it.
Oh,
I know Peacock has all the edited for content stuff on the USA Network and the Sci-Fi Channel, but they'll never put it out. And you know what? That's fine. It's fine. Because kids are more interested in YouTube shorts anyway. But
yeah, unfortunately. Well, let's get back into the Gorn for a second here. One of the things that they really championed, and there's plenty of shots, video shots and even still images of the cast interacting with these Gorn puppets. That it's mostly puppets, but they use the digital effects to enhance what is there, which in my mind is always the correct thing to do with digital effects. It's supposed to enhance what is there, not be what is there. Do you have any thoughts to the Gorn in terms of puppets versus digital, and how that has affected maybe even other franchises and things along those lines?
Not really, because it's weird with these Gorn, because like obviously the original Gorn was a guy in a bad rubber suit that had a very clear zipper mark on the back of it. Like,
Yeah.
I was just talking to my wife about this earlier today. Like, I remember, because we're Atlanta based, and we go to Dragon Con all the time, and I remember the guy who was in the Gorn suit used to come to Dragon Con to sit in the Hall of Fame, the Walk of Fame, to sign pictures and basically make $60 for the weekend or whatever he was making for anybody who bothered to come up. And I remember looking at that guy, and just because at the time, like, the Gorn had 2 appearances, and one of them was in the 60s, and one of them was a full CG, kind of bad CG Gorn that was in one of the better episodes of Star Trek Enterprise.
Yeah.
And just looking at that guy's like, wow, this is that guy's life. He's just here to sign pictures of one appearance he made 50 years ago. Little did I know then that I would be, I would think about the Gorn every day.
Well, like I said, we've never, this show, we've never shied away from talking about other franchises, especially that franchise. So we'll go ahead and say, like, I'm a big fan of Puppet Yoda. When it switched to all digital Yoda, I felt the disconnect. And I think part of what makes these Gorn so visceral is that they're digitally enhanced, not digital. Those puppets are on set.
Say what you will about the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. I really enjoyed 2 of those movies, but I'll let you figure out which ones.
Yeah.
BB-8 being a real thing that could roll around the set.
Of course.
Amazing.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
Puppet Yoda in episode 1, not quite so good. It was a bad
puppet. It did lose a little bit of steam.
And they've subsequently replaced that with a much better CG model. But there's a time and a place for both. And that's where I think, and even if we take that back to, if we compare something like The Mandalorian to Strange New Worlds, one thing that they're both using is I don't think they're using the same technology, but they're using similar technology based on the same idea. This idea of the volume sets.
Yes.
Where a lot of the new Star Wars stuff is filmed with these gigantic full LCD screens around them that are showing all these amazing CG effects behind them as if they're standing in front of it to respond to.
Yeah.
And when that works, it works really, really well. And when it doesn't, it feels weird and off-putting.
Yeah.
But I will tell you, Strange New Worlds uses that too. Strange New Worlds uses that in this season and in this episode. No, not in this episode. That was an episode I watched the other day.
Yeah, they do. They do use it in this episode.
I guess they do use it in this episode on the ice planet. But one of the most compelling things that I've ever seen in Star Trek. I'm a big fan of cool shots. One of the coolest shots in Next Generation is Best of Both Worlds Part 1. No, it's Part 2. Take it back. It's Part 2. Worf and Data are in the shuttle, and they're leaving the Enterprise to go and try to get back Captain Picard, who is currently Locutus.
Yep.
But they shoot it from the side.
Yep.
And you see through the windows of the shuttle. And it's one of the few times they ever did this in the show, that you see them taking off from the shuttle, and Data's like, leaving shuttle bay in 3 seconds, and then you count, and it's actually 3 seconds, and then they're out in the battle, and you see stuff going on behind the windows, and you see them. It's such a simple shot, but it's so effective.
Yeah.
And that moment will always stick with me, because it's one of the coolest things, because it makes you feel like you're actually in the shuttle with them actually moving, because so often they don't do that.
Yeah.
But what they do on this show, and this is earlier in the season, I think it's Spock and Muck when they do this. They're on the starbase, and they're in a conference room. We've been in plenty of conference rooms in Star Trek, except this conference room has a big window. And outside of this big window is one of these big volume style CG screens. So you see all of the ships around, and you see a ship flying up and portraying these big flags. And it's like, this is what this is for. It's to add to the scene. And that's not the scene. That's happening outside the window. But it just, it's okay. Yes.
It's beautiful. Like it's such a wonderful, again, it's a wonderful thing to enhance the wonderful acting that is happening in the room. It
Yes.
gives it that background of, hey, they are living in this fantastical world. Yeah, they've done a wonderful job, and I can't wait to see how this technology continues to progress, because I mean, if you were to show, well, we've already mentioned the Star Wars prequel trilogy. Look at the behind the scenes stuff on that. It was entirely blue. Hey, that little tape X is where your focus should be. This tennis, this tennis ball on a stick. It's the big monster coming at you. But I mean, they've got this stuff down to where it looks. I mean, even in the behind the scenes footage, you have to do a double take because it looks that good. Yeah, man, they are just killing it, knocking it out of the park. Anything else that we haven't mentioned about this episode before we move into the stats?
How you feel about Sam Kirk?
We made the comparison earlier about Aliens and Predator, and I feel like Sam Kirk in this episode is, what was it? Hicks or Hudson? The one that's, oh man, this is it, man.
That's Hudson, I think.
Is that Hudson? Yeah.
That's Hudson.
He comes off as that guy. And really kind of he fires off like we haven't seen before and haven't seen since. Like, it's a real character inconsistency in my mind.
So it's Sam Kirk is a weird thing because it plays off to a very good joke in the first episode of Strange New Worlds that, Kirk, we're gonna get Kirk, but it's not James Kirk, it's his brother,
right.
Who we've never known served on the Enterprise at all, because I knew Spock. But one thing that I love that they have done, and I don't know if it started in this episode, but it definitely plays out, spoiler warning, through a lot of this the next season. Spock doesn't like Sam Kirk very much. And I just think that's so funny because Jim Kirk would be one of his best friends of all time.
Yeah.
and there's an episode of the original series where Kirk's brother dies, and it happens off screen, and Spock doesn't shed a tear.
Yeah, it's funny to see like all the little things that are alluded to down the line, where Spock Amok, T'Pring makes the comment of, I'm not chasing you around the galaxy to marry me. And it was said with such a tone that even if you don't know, it's like, that sounds like a setup for something down the line.
And wasn't her like assistant in that episode the guy she ends up marrying in Amok Time?
I think so. Yeah. I think you're right. I'm not sure. They're gonna take my card.
Look, there's 800 episodes of this stuff. We make mistakes. It's okay. It's okay. But yeah. So I do want to talk about Spock and Chapel again, because again, this, my precious canon, Spock. It's supposed to be unrequited love between Chapel and Chapel loves Spock, but Spock doesn't see. I don't care. Ethan Peck and Jess Bush, anytime they share the screen together, it is just
magical.
They work so well. Together. Just supreme talents, the both of them. And love what happens in this episode, especially with Spock sort of, one of Spock's key moments in the history of the character is when in the motion picture, he is about to complete the ritual of Kolinar, which will purge all emotion from him, and it will be pure logic. And he doesn't go through with it.
Yep.
And and at the time when I was a kid watching these movies, I didn't really get what all that meant. And to see him purposefully lose control and then not be able to gain that control back, not only does it make me think, this is when he begins the path to Kolinar because he's afraid of what's going to happen. But also that it's just he's embracing a side of himself that he wants to reject, that human side.
Yeah.
This show's great. I'm sorry. I love Strange New Worlds. Sorry, haters.
Yeah, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Anybody who is purposefully avoiding this show, you don't know what you're missing. This is
really
some
don't.
yeah, this has been some of the best. This has been some of the best Star Trek ever. I'll go ahead and say ever. You know, if you pull up any random best of Star Trek lists that are out there, guaranteed you're going to have a couple of things from New Trek in that list, because they are firing on all cylinders. They're ticking all the boxes.
This season ends with a bang too. I love next episode. I love Memento Mori. I was on this show the last time talking about that episode.
Yep.
I'm even a fan of the Elysian Kingdom, which would have been, I guess, your last episode.
Yeah.
It's not the strongest episode, but the costuming is so much fun. Like this is a show that knows how to have fun, but also in the very next episode give you one of the most tense, scary experiences that Star Trek has ever given. Like I can't wait for season 3. I know we're like a year out from it, but I'm so ready.
Yeah, it's really going to be fantastic. I'm interested to see what they've been able to cook up in light of not only COVID protocols, but also the strike, and trying to, get things back on track. Yeah, they've had a lot of downtime because, well, this doesn't really spoil anything, but season 2 ends on a pretty big cliffhanger. And, of course, when we got the word that, the hiatus is going to be a little bit longer than we anticipated.
Yes. They were about to start filming when the strike happened, and it's like, oh. But they have shown me in 2 seasons that they can put together some of the best Star Trek in live action in 20 years.
Yeah.
There's an episode in season 2 that is the most I've rewatched a Star Trek episode since the 90s.
Oh yeah. Yeah. And keep in mind, folks, that these seasons, 2 combined seasons are not as long as one season of some of these original shows. Some of these episode counts were 24, 26, around there. That was typical for stuff coming out, basically 60s into the 90s.
Well, and that was the excuse for Discovery as to why they focused on 3 characters, really.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
And while they still kind of do that in Strange New Worlds, somehow they just let more stuff in. It's just that slightly more episodic nature that they'll focus an episode on a character that isn't Pike that we have in this. And again, I don't mean to disparage Discovery. It's just one of those things where it's like, the only reason that I can disparage Discovery is because these same people made this, and it's so much better. and I don't mean that to disrespect Discovery, because I love Discovery. I think it's great, and I love Michael Burnham, one of the characters with the most interesting relationship with fans.
Yeah. I'm really interested to get back into discussing Discovery, which is not going to be for a long time, but because of Michael Burnham's perception in the fandom, there are like the lovers are such big lovers of Burnham, while the haters are as equally venomous and ruthless in their thoughts, feelings, and sometimes words.
Almost baby Gorn like to the reaction.
Yes. Yeah. There's been a lot of stuff about this show that, and again, because of the episodic nature of the adventures, you get adventures of the episodes, you get a romantic comedy, you get a horror movie, you get a political thriller, you get a courtroom drama, you get all these different types of things, but the story continues with these characters, which let's be perfectly honest, it's never been about the ship, it's never been about the Federation. We care about these people, they have been endeared to us through character development and performances, in that, people are getting tattoos and spending their time trying to make the closest Lego facsimiles of these things. I mean, people are, there is no shortage of Trek DIY crafty projects out there. Just a continuous outpouring of love. So they're doing something right.
Yeah.
And yeah, I can't wait to see what season 3 brings. But we've done a lot in terms of praising the cast and all the things that are happening in front of the camera. But as we do, we also talk about the folks behind the camera. And as we do every episode, we ask the question, who do we blame? This episode was written by Davey Perez, whose last work in the franchise was Strange New World Season 1, Episode 4, Memento Mori. Drew, are you familiar with that episode?
Passingly. I'm passingly familiar with Memento Mori.
Yeah, we talked about that with Drew back on episode 121. And this episode was directed by Chris Byrne, whose last episode was actually Discovery, Season 1, Episode 9, Into the Forest I Go, which we discussed with former USS Enterprise engineer Michael LeBlanc back on episode 95. And we've got quite a few interesting guest stars in terms of the ensigns, in terms of the refugees. But the person I want to focus on is Bruce Horak as Hemmer, 86 Hemmer. Bruce was born in Calgary, Alberta, Canada. So, he's a sweetheart. And at 18 months, he was diagnosed with retinoblastoma, which caused him to lose his right eye and over 90% of the vision in his left eye. And Horak developed an interest in writing and theater in 3rd grade when a theater company came to his school and put on a play. And Horak attended the Mount Royal University and trained at Loose Moose Theater. One of his first plays was What You Can't See, about a boy who hides his visual impairment. And then in 2001, he co-created The Canada Show, a comedic attempt to distill the history of Canada down to 1 hour. He co-created the one-man show This Is Cancer, where Horak plays the character of Cancer. He appeared in the role of Jake in a production of Evil Dead the Musical in 2009. Did you ever see Evil Dead the Musical?
I didn't. I did not.
I got to tell you, years ago, I came across a bootleg DVD at a comic book convention, and I snatched it up, and damn, I am really eager to see a live performance of Evil Dead the Musical, because it is hilarious. I really love it. In 2019, Horak co-created Goblin Macbeth, which imagines goblins finding Shakespeare plays and attempting to act one out. He also played Philo Farnsworth in Season 2, Episode 3 of Warehouse 13 before appearing in the pilot episode of Star Trek Strange New Worlds. But unfortunately, this is the last time we will see Hemmer proper, I'll say. But yeah, thank you.
Can I just say, and we didn't talk about this moment specifically, but the last moments of Hemmer.
Yes.
So the thing about Andorians is that Andor, the planet they're from, is extremely cold. They're known for their Ushantors, their ice knives. And I'm going to be talking, even though I don't know if this is going to get recorded or not. But the planet that they're on is super, super cold. And it's what, helps them to defeat the Gorn and hold the Gorn hatchlings off. But there's just something about Hemmer stepping outside of the force field to just breathe in that cold air and just say, just like Andoria.
Yeah.
Before committing himself to the great sacrifice to save his crew. Just a fantastic moment. Bruce Horak, you are the only person that could have done that. Thank you for being in this role. And thank you for being a further part of Star Trek that we're not going to talk about yet. But I'm a classic character that it's one of those things where there was an engineer on the Enterprise before Scotty, whatever. But no, Hemmer, just so good. So fantastic. Absolutely loved it.
Yeah, Bruce, thank you so much for bringing this wonderful, wonderful character to life. And who knows? Maybe we'll see him or the character again in the future. You never know. Except we know. So we come to the question that we ask every week. Drew, Burris, is this essential viewing? If someone is sitting down and watching Star Trek for the very first time and they come to this episode, All Those Who Wander, is this one that they must see, or is this an episode that they can skip?
Is there a percentage above 100%?
Sky's the limit, my friend. Sky's the limit.
Because this is absolutely a must-see episode. I there's a lot of there's some episodes I could consider maybe, like, it's hard in 10 episode seasons to say whether something is a must watch or not. Like in a 25 episode season, it's easy to skip a couple. In 10 episode seasons, it's a lot harder. But when you have a just not just a character death, but a character birth when it comes to Uhura's decision to stay with Starfleet and finally finding her place and opening herself up, and like you don't make friends because you're afraid of what's going to happen when they go away. Like, this episode is great, and it's because I love the Gorn. The Gorn are a sideshow to me in this episode to the Himmer Uhura relationship, and that is so necessary. You cannot skip this. I can't skip.
Yeah, and trying to, I mean,
we didn't even talk about La'an talking in this entire episode, and the fact that we're gonna have to, all right, wind it back. We're gonna have to do this whole thing again.
I was just about to say, trying to be as objective as possible. Could you potentially skip this narratively? Yeah, but if you're on the track of the development of Uhura, Lon, Spock and Chapel, these are all critical.
La'an leaves the Enterprise at the end of this episode. We didn't even talk about it. It was in your recap. We didn't even talk about it. Yeah, I feel so bad.
Yeah, narratively you could, but I think at this point we are endeared to so many of these characters that, I mean, even M'Benga, this episode for him is the fallout of Elysian Kingdom. And we see like, oh, that is still affecting him. And that's, and we see that, the fallout of Elysian Kingdom is just the beginning of peeling back the layers of M'Benga. So yeah, this is important. This is really important. And to be honest, like, I feel like it's one of the earliest layers of Ortegas. We talked about Ortegas early on, and her speech, although short at the memorial for Hemmer, gives us a little bit of insight as to who she is and how she operates day to day on the ship. So yeah, this is important. This is an important episode. And I mean, with the understanding that it's Star Trek, and I'm going to suggest everybody watch every episode of Star Trek.
There's really only 2 episodes of Star Trek that I will repeatedly tell people not to watch.
Okay, what are
they? Code of Honor and the Crusher Ghost Candle episode.
Sub Rosa.
Yeah.
Those are probably the most maligned. I think those are more maligned than any episode of the original series.
Well, Spock's brain gets a lot.
Okay. Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, that one's pretty silly. But anyways, yeah. So Drew, thank you so much for taking the time to sit and continue to nerd out with us, our official Gorn ambassador. Thank you so much. Do you have any parting thoughts before we go? Anything about the episode, this series, the franchise as a whole? Another wonderful appearance on Computer Resume podcast. Any parting thoughts before we wrap it up?
I'm so happy to be here to talk about Star Trek. I think about Star Trek every day. I love Star Trek, and I am happy that I get to experience it new a lot recently. Thank you, Star Trek Discovery, for giving me all this new Star Trek.
Well, folks, in 2 weeks, we will be joined on our season 7 finale by Star Trek cosplay comedian Danny Rydell to discuss the season 1 finale of Strange New Worlds, episode 10, A Quality of Mercy, which is available exclusively on Paramount Plus. Drew, where can people find you on the internet working on nerdy things that people care about?
You can find me on the More You Nerd podcast, going strong at almost 13 years. Ooh, lucky number 13, where we are currently wrapping up our conversations of the 1990s X-Men TV show. It's so funny that we talk about Hemmer as being the, grumpy curmudgeon that is endeared and bonded to the plucky young person, because that's basically Wolverine and Jubilee in that series.
Yeah.
So it's funny that those things are happening to me at the same time. And of course we have a lot of new cool stuff happening in that coming up in the next few months, including a look at a classic Japanese anime series that will be me taking my co-host Miles through it all the way through the entire series for the very first time, but it's one of my all-time favorites. So if you want to know which one it is, come check us out, themoreyounerd.com, and wherever you can find us on socials. You can also find us at CosmicCrit.com. Cosmic Crit is our actual play podcast where we are playing the Starfinder game by Paizo. It's like D&D, but in space. It's sci-fi fantasy, and it's really cool. And of course, one of those shows, we did a brief run with Star Trek Adventures with Todd joining us as a character on that. And don't worry, we're in plans of bringing that back. But time is always the issue.
Oh yes.
And of course, you can find that at CosmicCrit.com as well.
And I am at Mr. Todd A. Davis on all of the socials. From all of us at the Computer Resume podcast, thank you so much for listening. And I'll see you in 10 Forward.
Us on Patreon and rate, review, and share on all your favorite platforms. Feel free to send us your subspace transmissions to computerresumepodcast@gmail.com or at Computer Resume on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Computer Resume podcast was created and produced by Mr. Todd A. Davis. Our logo was designed by Will Martin and Justin Bishop. The opening theme was produced by Justin Bishop, and our outro music was provided with permission by Dronode. Additional music was provided by Mr. Todd A. Davis and Gary Horn, and the voice of Computer Resume podcast and executive producer, me, Kat Davis. # LLAP. We'll see you next time.
Going through a Star Trek. We're doing Star Trek stuff in space. We probably got some phasers and shuttle pods, and we're gonna find a brand new race.
How's that for a slice of fried gold?